And so what's going on right now with China is that the ships that are filled with Chinese products don't know where to go. They're stuck in port. The factories that are making the Chinese goods are going to have to slow down because they don't have ships to load the stuff into. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on China to stop its bad acting and to come to the table.
Yes, sir, Bob. It's an interesting point of view. Joining us now, somebody who knows a lot about China, Mr. Wilbur Ross, former Commerce Secretary. Actually, you had an office in your private firm in in China for a long time. So, Wilbur, this idea that, you know, 125% tariff, China is going to lose its biggest customer. And it should, I mean, it's going to wreak havoc on their economy. And I was talking about this last night. I think Xi Jinping's making a huge mistake.
Well, I think he is. I think escalating this is not in his interest because eventually, if it's a real tariff war, China is the loser. And they're the loser in a couple of regards. Their economy is smaller than ours. They're about 2/3 ours. So every dollar of pain we inflict on them is $1.50 versus $1 on us. Plus, we import so much more from them than they do to us that they'll run out of things to put tariffs on long before we do. But I think the most important thing, the critics say, oh, well, China will just find other markets. That's a falsehood. And the reason it's a falsehood, the only reason those other markets are buying from China now, because they mostly all have deficits with China, the only reason they're buying is they have a trade surplus with us. So we are really financing China's other customers. Now with the tariffs we're putting on everybody else, that's going to be gone. They're not going to have the same subsidy. They aren't going to be able to afford to buy what they are now from China, much less a big increase.
It's also interesting to me, you know, Trump made a bet last week, and it was kind of a shock and awe, all the tariff charges and so forth. But people came to the U.S. They didn't go to China. I mean, I was reading some critics saying, well, they're going to go to China and blah, blah. No, they came to the U.S. Nobody went to China. I thought that was telling. These countries, including the EU, voted with their feet, essentially.
Well, they have no alternative. Remember, most of them already have trade deficits with China. So they need us just like China needs us. We are the linchpin of world trade, period. Stop, full stop. And that is something that everybody is finally starting to realize. Now, all the world leaders had to be very brave in the beginning and say, well, we're not going to get pushed around, we'll fight back. But as they think through, well, what should we actually do? I think they come to a different conclusion, and that's called, we better make a deal.
Yes.
And I think the key for Trump is to do deals pretty quickly with them.
Interesting point, right. Get it done fast.
Get it done, get
wait.
it out of the system. And I think the first day that he announces a deal with Japan or Vietnam, people are going to see there is an end to this. And what I think there's problem is now, fear of the unknown is the worst fear, the most compelling fear. And the media, with playing up all these what ifs, has conjured up the boogeyman. Remember when you were a little kid, the boogeyman comes in the dark of night? Well, they're coming in the dark of night. But once we make a deal, boogeyman will be gone because it'll be morning.
And so that might ameliorate at the worst and maybe even help the stock markets. I mean,
I think it'll help it a lot because whoever makes that first deal is going to set a pattern. And you already saw Scott Bresson say the 3 requirements. So one of the things people were complaining about, but we don't know what we have to do. Scott has laid it out very carefully.
And he seems to be taking the lead on this, and I think he's the right guy to do that.
Oh, I totally agree with you. First of all, he knows a lot more about international trade. and currencies and government bonds and all that. So he probably is the best qualified on the macro topics. And then linking him up with the U.S. trade rep, who's into every semicolon of every arrangement,
Jameson,
is a perfect match.
You know, I was just thinking back on this. You're coming on the set today. I mean, we've been friends for decades and decades. But so you and I are in Beijing, and you were doing the commodities. Remember the commodity? I was your sidekick. I was your deputy on the commodities thing. And we're sitting there for like practically the entire day working out commodity numbers, which I guess worked into a deal that China never abided by, did
Well, that's right. That's the other thing people forget. We did have a phase one deal.
Yes.
And well, for a little while, they could hide and say, oh, well, it was COVID. Well, COVID's long gone. That's no longer an excuse for not honoring the deal. So I think the strategy that Trump apparently has of isolating China is the right strategy. He always believes in maximum pressure.
Yes.
And I think he now has applied it. Now, the last 40 or 50% of tariffs probably doesn't really mean that much. Once you're up to the 50% level, that's really saying, I'm not going to do business with you anymore. So adding another 50 or 100 doesn't change the world very much.
Yes, terrific.
But symbolically, what he also did is to say, oh, you raised on me because I put on you. How do you like this big raise?
Right, terrific.
And I think that was a very interesting gesture.
As it turns out, art of the deal is pretty successful.
Well, remember, he's a high-risk, high-return guy.
You are wonderful.
He's read my book.
Thank you, Wilbur. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your wisdom.